Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Susan Briel. I am a judge in the San Francisco Superior Court, and I am co-chair of the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking, or SFCAHT. And I want to thank every one of you for joining us today for the 2022 launch of Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and for the presentation of SFCAHT's Modern Day Abolitionist Awards. We have over 150 people who have registered and joined us for this press conference, and numerous television outlets and news outlets. And despite the fact that we are entering our third year of a worldwide pandemic, you are here. Despite the fact that we are marking the anniversary of the storming of our Capitol and the attack on our Constitution, you are here. And despite the fact that we cannot greet each other in person, you are still here today. The United Nations in 2020 called domestic violence a shadow pandemic right alongside COVID. But I believe that the other shadow pandemic that haunts us every day is human trafficking. It is difficult to track data, but we know that the pandemic has created further opportunities for exploitation and abuse on the dark web, on the internet, in our cities, in our towns, where survivors have few options for housing and few places to seek shelter from exploitation and abuse. We have really not been able to abolish the more than 10,000 years of slavery, forced labor, and commercial sexual exploitation in the world. Still, you are here. You are here as responsible, concerned, compassionate community members, leaders, and advocates. And by being here today, you reaffirm the worth and the dignity of every human being. And I want to thank you. I now turn this program over to my distinguished co-chair, Benita Hopkins.
Thank you, Judge Briel. And welcome to all here today, this afternoon. Established in 2010, the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking represents a coalition with membership of over 50 law enforcement agencies, government departments, community-based service providers, advocacy groups, socially responsible businesses, legislators, educators, and faith-based organizations committed, as Judge Briel said, to ending human trafficking through collaboration, education, outreach, and advocacy. From the standpoint of collaboration, collaboration is aimed at connecting policy with law enforcement, criminal justice action with work on healing, restoration, and reintegration of survivors, public sector efforts with support from socially responsible businesses, local community with the international community. From an advocacy point of view, efforts are focused on ensuring public support and policy change to address the root causes of human trafficking, safeguard and expand the rights of survivors, prioritize the needs of government agencies and community-based organizations involved in anti-trafficking, and organize a grassroots movement for action against human trafficking. Education is being approached with a three-pronged strategy with SFCAHT. Education of vulnerable groups, such as immigrants, teenagers, foster care families, and transitional age youth, homeless youth, and etc. Our featured program for teenagers utilizes the intersection of social justice and arts through engaging annually students in middle and high schools from across the Bay Area in a poster, writing, and newly this year, music contest and Teen Power Summit, where students learn about human trafficking and share experiences in advocacy, activism, and leadership. Another prong is the education of professionals and volunteers directly involved in fighting, human trafficking and assisting the survivors or encountering survivors as first responders. At the start of this year's Human Trafficking Prevention campaign, in collaboration with the California Department of Social Services and support from SFCAHT's member agencies, we are launching a training that is made available to the department staff in all 58 counties involved in social services and eligibility determination for trafficking and crime victim assistance programs benefits. And the last prong, education of the general public about human trafficking, its signs and impact on community well-being, and the critical role of community members in recognizing the crime, identifying the victims, triggering the criminal justice response, and assisting the victims. Since 2010, SFCAHT has been organizing a month-long annual campaign aimed at educating community. Today, we are kicking off our 13th annual campaign. And now I am pleased to invite the U.S. Attorney Stephanie Hines to present her opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Benita, and thank you, Judge Brill. First, let me thank the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking for inviting me to speak here today. SFCAHT's annual awareness campaign has become an important tradition for the Bay Area's law enforcement community. Each year, this coalition tirelessly works to broaden awareness of the plague of human trafficking and strengthen the partnership of law enforcement, nonprofit organizations, and the private sector to eradicate sex and labor exploitation in the Bay Area. It has been our pleasure to partner with you for the past 12 years to meet this worthy goal. The Northern District of California is as large as it is diverse. We encompass 15 counties with approximately 9 million residents and 3 major cities. Our district has all manner of industry: manufacturing, agriculture, Silicon Valley, shipping, major airports, military bases, and large universities. This is an exciting and dynamic place to live and work, but exploitation takes many forms in this district, and its impact is profound. Prosecution and deterrence of human trafficking is a significant priority for the United States Department of Justice and for this office. We work closely with our federal, state, and local partners to investigate and prosecute these heinous crimes. In July 2020, our office established the Federal Human Trafficking Collaboration, an informal collective of nearly a dozen federal agencies that encounter or investigate sex and labor trafficking. The purpose of the FHTC is to directly engage a variety of often disparate federal components in a collaborative effort to educate practitioners, share relevant information and expertise, and facilitate interagency collaboration in current and future trafficking investigations and prosecutions. This endeavor is in line with the Biden administration's recently released National Action Plan to combat human trafficking, which directly encourages interagency cooperation and collaboration on trafficking matters. 2021 was a very challenging year for many reasons. Notwithstanding these challenges, our office robustly charged and convicted both buyers and sellers of child pornography and commercial sex, and we continue to actively investigate coerced labor schemes. I would like to highlight a few of those cases that we brought last year. On August 12, 2021, a federal jury convicted Johnny Ray Wolfenbarger of child pornography and child enticement charges after a 1-week trial. This was a digital sex trafficking prosecution of a man who repeatedly purchased and directed live streams child sex shows from traffickers in the Philippines. The defendant faces a mandatory minimum of 15 years up to life in prison. On October 6, 2021, a federal jury convicted Araceli Mendoza of conspiracy and sex trafficking of children after a 2-week trial. Mendoza and her 3 co-defendants operated a prostitution ring in San Jose, which exploited 3 minor girls through prostitution. These girls were lured from their families, advertised online, addicted to drugs, and required to make $1,000 a night as sex workers. Mendoza and her co-defendants face a mandatory minimum of 10 years up to life in prison. In October 27th, Cassidy Lavarini Doyle was sentenced to 16 years in federal prison for several sex crimes against children, including offering a woman in Walnut Creek $30,000 to purchase her 10-year-old and 11-year-old daughters for a night of sex. He also traveled to Cambodia to sexually abuse local children and possessed over 100 videos of graphic child pornography on his seized electronic devices. Our office also convicted Oakland-based pimp Kalion Dyer Hogan of sex trafficking and child pornography charges. Shockingly, Dyer Hogan trafficked 2 minor girls during his federal pornography trial. He later pled guilty to sex trafficking charges after his conviction for pornography. He also faces a mandatory minimum of 10 years in prison. Human trafficking is a global problem as much as it is a local one. Traffickers, whether individuals, gangs, or organizations, make millions in profit from coerced sex and labor schemes. These criminals are brazen, ruthless, and persistent. They deliberately exploit some of the most vulnerable people in our community, and these victims are overwhelmingly women and children of color. They are often poor, they are isolated from their loved ones and support systems, and these defendants use humiliation, intimidation, violence, and abuse to keep them compliant and manipulate them into believing they cannot escape. The United States Attorney's Office is committed to finding these victims, freeing them, and prosecuting their traffickers to the fullest extent of the law. We welcome the opportunity to partner with other state and local authorities and community organizations to seek justice, accountability, restitution, and healing for these victims, their families, and communities blighted by human trafficking and exploitation. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our U.S. Attorney. It's a pleasure to have you here. It's thrilling to have you here. And now I am going to call upon the public defender of the city and county of San Francisco, always a friend to SFCAHT, and who understands that numerous public defender clients are actually survivors of human trafficking. Mr. Raju.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you, Ms. Hopkins, for to the SF Collaborative Against Human Trafficking for the invitation. And I really appreciate Judge Brielle, your initial comments about slavery and forced labor, because if we're talking about human trafficking, it is important that we go deep and look at the initial human trafficking that happened on this continent. And, I think this is a moment where we really have to open up and examine, and which is happening now, the war on drugs, the militarization of the border, and is that contributing to some of the trafficking that we're seeing now, and what are the ways that we think about reconceptualizing some of the root causes? Oftentimes the view is one of law enforcement. But I want to convey to everyone on this call that we as public defenders view ourselves as a critical part of public safety and a critical part of community health. And as Judge Brielle pointed out, a lot of our clients who are charged with something are often victims of human trafficking in one way or another. Now, sometimes it's very difficult to bring that out from someone because of coercive situations or because of complex traumas that they themselves have experienced. And that's why it's really important and a huge point of emphasis in the public defender's office that we bring that full cultural competency to our interaction with anyone that we come into contact with. You know, we have a requirement that we see our clients early on in the representation within the first 48 hours and have an extensive meeting. We have a requirement that our felony attorneys reach out to family members early on in the representation so they can start to unearth that fuller picture. We try to leave no stone unturned in the investigation. We have social workers that will make the attempt to dive deep into the individuals we represent to bring out that social history. Because when we bring out that full picture of who the individual is, that's when we can actually bring about justice. And currently, there's sometimes a churn. There's people who come into the system that there may not be something filed by the district attorney, or the case may resolve early on. But usually if someone is coming into the jail or into the realm where you'll see that there's often an underlying condition that should be addressed nevertheless. So we've reached out actually to City Hall and to the Board of Supervisors to get some on-the-ground case managers to sort of assess needs and get people what they need in that immediate moment that it can really start the healing process. And because of the Fifth Amendment, we're in a unique position once someone has been booked to actually do the full deep dive into who someone is in a way that a lot of the other law enforcement agencies can't do because they don't have that access. We have that access. And in addition to obviously fighting for people's best legal outcome, which is our obligation, our mandate, we're seeking the best holistic resolution for that individual and to empower them to be in a better place in a holistic way. And I think that's also another way of approaching the human trafficking issue that our society is dealing with. Of course, we want to collaborate with community-based organizations, schools, in whatever way we can to bring about more awareness of any issue related to community health. And that's something we'll continue to do. But I, again, want to just establish our appreciation and awareness about the crucial role that the Public Defender's Office can play in both awareness and empowerment for individuals so that they can get themselves to a place where they're not potentially subject to becoming a victim of human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now it is my great privilege to call upon the District Attorney of the City and County of San Francisco, also a good friend to SFCAHT, someone who has truly dedicated his entire career to criminal justice reform. And he's going to speak about some of the efforts of his office on human trafficking. I present to you the Honorable Chesa Bodine.
Thank you so much, Judge. And I really want to give a special thanks to the co-chairs, Judge Brielle and Benita Hopkins, also to Antonia Levine, the coordinator of the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking. Thank you also to my fellow speakers and community leaders for standing together to increase awareness and share this call to action to end the exploitation of all people for labor, domestic servitude, or commercial sexual activity. Congratulations also to the extraordinary champions that we are honoring today. Each year, this event creates the opportunity to raise the voices of those often not heard from or forgotten, the opportunity to address concerns shared across system partners, and the opportunity to discuss priorities for the year ahead. Today, I'd like to share 3 of my office's main priorities to combat human trafficking in 2022. My office will continue to provide extensive ongoing support to human trafficking survivors. As your district attorney, I'm working to design and implement new strategies to identify victims and address criminal exploitation and trafficking in all forms. The Victim Services Division of my office has a human trafficking team that provides multilingual, trauma-informed services to survivors. Increasing the language capacity of the Victim Services Division in my office, not only the human trafficking unit, but the entire division, is one of many strategies necessary to identify and then support victims and survivors of human trafficking. In 2021, I was able to hire 10 new victim advocates, 8 of whom are fluent in both English and another language. This is part of our long-term commitment to expand victim services and language access in San Francisco. This expands the capacity of our talented, passionate, and dedicated team to implement a new policy to ensure that victims with limited English proficiency have access to court interpreters in all proceedings. In addition, we collaborate and partner with other city, nonprofit, and government agencies to ensure that human trafficking victims receive comprehensive and coordinated victim services. One example of the ecosystem of cross-system collaboration is a human trafficking services hotline. And I want to thank Antonia for your initial vision. Thank you to Tara, my director of policy, for working behind the scenes with the Department on the Status of Women to ignite the work behind this important initiative. In addition, of course, many of the other staff in my office, some of whom are here with us today, work tirelessly both to identify survivors of human trafficking, to hold those who are responsible accountable, and to make sure that we can break the cycle. One of the ways we do that is by funding community agencies that provide services to victims and survivors of human trafficking. Last year, for example, we worked with Huckleberry Advocacy and Response Team, or HART, to modify the work we fund to include the development of guidelines and best practices for working with commercially sexually exploited children, or CSEC, in residential facilities. Too often, CSEC youth who are placed in emergency housing or short-term residential treatment programs are not provided immediate crisis counseling and intervention. And as a result, too many leave the programs. The guidelines developed by HART will help inform the development of improved services and system response for San Francisco youth. My second area of focus is to continue to build trust and connections with immigrant communities and labor organizations. Criminalizing undocumented individuals and immigrant communities increases the motivations for traffickers by driving the immigrant community further away from the resources that can help to keep them safe. For these reasons, my office and the University of San Francisco School of Law partnered to create the Unaccompanied Children Assistance Program, or UCAP, which diverts youth at the pre-filing stage from the juvenile justice system and into a program tailored to meet the needs of unaccompanied youth fleeing violence, poverty, and hunger. Youth who fall into this population often have experienced highly traumatic events during their journey to the United States, such as kidnapping or sexual or physical assault, and subsequently forced labor trafficking upon arrival in this country. Our program focuses on linkages to trauma-informed, culturally competent, and bilingual interventions to meet these youth's basic educational, vocational, and mental health needs. The goal of this program is to bring the youth to safety and stability through case management and therapeutic services, and to create a pipeline to school and work so that unaccompanied children can achieve success in this country. Through this program, we aim to reduce drug trafficking, children coerced and forced into drug sales. In recognition of the lack of labor trafficking cases being brought to our office and the need for broader worker protection, I created a first-of-its-kind worker protection unit, which is exclusively focused on protecting the rights of workers and enforcing labor laws. This unit has already launched multiple investigations into labor trafficking cases. To increase awareness about the unit's work and ensure that anyone who comes across a potential labor trafficking case knows that our office is here to help. We started a labor advisory council, and we want to hear from you and from the community at large. I see these collaborative investments in prevention, protection, and intervention as key strategies to combat human trafficking and exploitation. Finally, my third priority area in 2022 is developing and implementing new strategies to identify, investigate, and hold those who harm and exploit others accountable. COVID-19 has pushed trafficking victims and survivors further into the shadows, making it more difficult than ever for people to come forward or cases to be discovered. Victims and survivors frequently experience trauma, linguistic and cultural isolation, fear related to immigration status, and cultural, familial, or broader social attitudes and beliefs that can increase vulnerability. We know that a person may be arrested for assault, drug sales, or other crimes. And when we look deeper into the case, that behavior is an expression of trauma linked to their surviving human trafficking. We know that a person may be identified as a victim of domestic or intimate partner violence. And when we look deeper into the case, they're also victims of trafficking. In 2021, my office was awarded a grant from the People Lab at UC Berkeley as part of the California 100 initiative to support a set of innovation across the state. As part of this project, we're working with a team of experts at Berkeley and Stanford to institute criteria for additional case review, leveraging analysts to flag cases with characteristics common in exploitation. Once these cases are flagged, my team works towards solutions centered in healing and recovery that simultaneously hold people accountable for harmful behavior. In other words, we need to make sure that we are not simply compounding the harm that survivors of trafficking have already experienced by prosecuting them for manifestations of their victimization. The priorities and projects that I have covered today will prevent future acts of exploitation, allow for successful prosecution, and protect all San Franciscans. We look forward to your partnership in making this vision a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, DA Bodine, and thank you for your word and your works against human trafficking. Before I go further, I would like to take the time to thank and acknowledge our press conference co-sponsors of today's events. On behalf of Judge Brill and myself and SFCAHT, we would like to acknowledge and thank the National Council of Jewish Women, San Francisco, and the California Massage Therapy Council for co-sponsoring this event today and always being there for us and co-laboring with us. Thank you so much. And now I introduce the Mayor of San Francisco, London Breed.
Thank you so much, Benita, and thank you for all the work you do. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you so much to the dedicated volunteers and the professionals, especially this year's awardees, for your hard work and really impressive accomplishments in preventing human trafficking, supporting survivors, and bringing perpetrators to justice. You inspire us all and support our efforts to rid San Francisco of this violence and sexual and commercial exploitation, and it means a lot. It's great to also be here with Judge Brill, who I know has been working on this issue for so many decades. Human trafficking exists in communities all over the world, sadly, and you would think in a place like San Francisco, it wouldn't be as problematic with all the resources that we have at our disposal, but despite our best efforts to fight it, it still exists. Traffickers, they prey on clearly the most vulnerable, people who are at risk, but we are here to say that there's help. Things are so much different today than they have been in the past. Whether it's our work to provide support to prevent these crimes from happening to begin with, or connecting victims to services. And I'm so glad that we're talking about those who are victims and who deserve the services and rights and things that we provide. In San Francisco, and in my office in particular, we have a victims' rights advocate who's focused on working citywide to support victims and connect them to the numerous services that we have. We've expanded support networks, and our goal is ultimately to empower survivors. We've also done a lot of work to support advocacy efforts that educate the community and increase public awareness. We are continuing to work across all departments, sectors, and community groups to bring an end to human trafficking in our city. Since the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking was founded in 2009, we've made significant progress in our fight. We've helped survivors become activists who can intervene and prevent others from suffering this violence. We've created and expanded programs and initiatives that give people the tools to seek help. And with the support from the state, we're working to provide more care for youth that have experienced commercial sexual exploitation. We provide housing for transitional housing, tailored services to foster care youth, and a drop-in center that provides education support, legal clinics, mental health services, and case management, all of which are being created in collaboration with survivors and those who have been on the front lines of this issue for decades to ensure that our resources are making the most impact. And in 2020, we implemented a campaign at the San Francisco International Airport, making it easier for people experiencing trafficking to ask for help in real time while they are at the airport. We live in the most beautiful city in the world. Thousands of people visit here every day to experience our city and its glory. Yet too many are still trapped in terror because of human trafficking. We need our community to be vigilant and to learn how to recognize the signs of terror. We need those suffering from this exploitation to know that the resources and protections are available. And I really want to thank the Department of the Status of Women and the Collaborative Against Human Trafficking for continuing to lead in this very important work. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of you to end human trafficking in San Francisco. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge Briel, for those words and the support that you render on this in this horrendous fight. We thank you for
meant
that.
Mayor Breed.
I'm sorry, Mayor Breed. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor Breed, and your words. I'm so sorry. And next, I would like to introduce the director of the San Francisco Department of the Status of Women, Kimberly Ellis.
Afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank my mayor, Mayor London Breed, Madam Mayor, for making time to join us this afternoon. Good morning or good afternoon to everyone. Benita, thank you so much to you, to the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking and its co-chairs for the opportunity to be with you today in community and to share with you what the Department on the Status of Women is doing to support survivors and to prevent human trafficking from occurring in our city. Your work, as well as the work of our modern day abolitionist awardees, Alia, Jen, and Tatum, make our city a safer place for all. Human trafficking continues to be one of the greatest human rights abuses today. Lack of consistent data and the hidden nature of trafficking make it difficult to understand the scope of trafficking and hold traffickers accountable. Now more so with COVID. The San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking has made significant strides in supporting survivors and collaborating with city agencies, law enforcement, and community-based organizations to help fill the gap in understanding trafficking in our city. SFCAHT's expertise is currently being utilized to design a pilot hotline for survivors of human trafficking with the goal of institutionalizing this city-supported service. In addition, the department has focused its human trafficking work around its California Department of Social Services funded $9 million grant, also known as SFCAHT, which stands for Safety, Opportunity, and Lifelong Relationships. This aims to provide a continuum of care for children experiencing or at risk of commercial sexual exploitation. I am pleased to announce that SFCAHT will be extending its project by 1 year, and we are currently working on a public service announcement on its foster care component, the Family and Me program, also known as FAM. The department has momentous plans for 2022, including 3 priorities as it relates to human trafficking. First, the department realizes that trafficking happens in every form, whether it's labor, drug, or sex trafficking. And we intend to expand our focus because we know women make up a significant number of trafficking victims, irrespective of the type of trafficking. Second, as part of a larger effort for the department, we are looking at effective innovations and data-driven decision-making to help guide our assessment on who we serve. We are looking at various technologies to build data dashboards, as well as bring in researchers from academia to help us figure out the right measurement tools to ensure that our dollars are being used effectively. Lastly, I recognize that trafficking doesn't just happen in our jurisdiction. So we are looking to build regional partnerships and leverage resources in neighboring counties with an effort to culminate with the Not in My Bay initiative. To be sure, there is still a lot of work to be done around human trafficking, and we look forward to working shoulder to shoulder with the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking in the coming year. Thank you again, everyone, for being here today, and congratulations to our awardees.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis, and thank you for the continued support and working in collaboration together. We so really appreciate it and need you all. And next, I would like to introduce the Regional Administrator for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families in Region 9, Pete Weldy.
Thank you so much, Benita, for the introduction. And hello, everybody. I'm so glad and grateful to be here and to have been invited. As Benita said, I'm the Regional Administrator for the Administration for Children and Families in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in Region 9. That is a mouthful. So basically, I am the ranking official for all of ACF's multiple programs in the San Francisco region, which includes California, Arizona, Nevada, Hawaii, 3 territories and freely associated states in the Pacific. It's a big territory, but I live and am proud to live in San Francisco and work here in the San Francisco Federal Building. Before I give my remarks, I just want to thank SFCAHT for the invitation, for organizing this, and especially to Antonia, also to Mayor Breed for her wonderful remarks, and the other numerous human services and law enforcement partners from the federal family, including Tatum King, who reached out to me about this, DHS, and our other partners in the state and localities. HHS stands 1,000,000% with the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking and its mission to ensure our global community values each human life free from violence, exploitation, or slavery. Since 2010, January has been a time to raise awareness and educate all members of society on how they can prevent and respond to human trafficking. It's also a time to acknowledge and celebrate the progress that survivor leaders, anti-trafficking organizations, communities, and allied individuals have achieved through their ongoing efforts and contributions to ending human trafficking. And while anyone can experience human trafficking, individuals who've been historically underserved and excluded, including communities of color, LGBTQIA+, women, and girls, are disproportionately vulnerable. Effectively preventing and responding human trafficking requires addressing the diverse factors that put these groups at a heightened risk for exploitation. Therefore, federal efforts to combat human trafficking are intertwined with our broader federal strategies to advance racial and gender equity. The National Action Plan to Combat Human Trafficking was released on December 3rd of last year, and the federal government reaffirmed its commitment to preventing and responding human trafficking through coordinated efforts. And at HHS, which includes the Office of Trafficking in Persons, which is under the umbrella of ACF. We're scaling prevention efforts through education, training, and addressing root causes that create risks for individuals, families, communities, and industries. We're expanding access to services for individuals and families who have experienced human trafficking, and we're building scientific understanding on what works, and we're monitoring trends. In 2021, we continued to fund the National Human Trafficking Hotline and a network of community-based victim service and prevention education programs. And on a personal note, similar to DA Boudin's comments about unaccompanied youth, in 2021, early on in March, I was deployed to San Diego to lead HHS's response to the unprecedented number of children arriving unaccompanied by an adult at the US-Mexico border. In San Diego at the convention center, we primarily served teenage young women. And I remember the first night when the young women arrived, they were afraid and exhausted and tired, but you could see an almost unbelievable resilience in their eyes. And as we worked quickly to reunite their children with their sponsors all over the country, we uncovered trafficking. It happened far too often. And when we discovered it, the appropriate law enforcement agencies were notified and special individualized services were provided for the children. There really is a warm handoff when children are identified as being trafficked. And if you had told me even a year ago that I would be working on a very professional and also very personal level to combat trafficking, I maybe would have laughed at you, but it did, it happened, and it confronted me very much in the face. And I think that this is to the broader point that businesses and civil society organizations, communities of faith, families, and individuals, we all have a role to play. And by working together, we can enhance our efforts to keep everyone safe and prevent human trafficking. It really is on all of us. So again, thank you so much for the invitation to speak, and congratulations to all the awardees.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weldy, for your kind words. And we look forward to even more collaboration. Thank you. And I must say, last but not least, from the San Francisco Police Department, Captain Sergio Chin. Welcome, Captain.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to this really important event. I'm Captain Sergio Chin from the Special Victims Unit with the SFPD. It has been definitely a busy and challenging year for our human trafficking unit. Two cases in particular that come to mind that I would like to share with everyone. In September 2021, our human trafficking unit was made aware that a person was lured to the U.S. For 3 months to help care for the family autistic child. During our investigation, it was discovered that the victim or the survivor had been working for a fam for the past 3 years around the clock, 7 days a week, no breaks, vacations. The victim earned about $40 a month and slept in a heated storage unit. She was only offered a meal a day, no access to a working cell phone or Wi-Fi. Upon concluding our investigation, the search warrant was conducted and evidence was seized which supported the victim's claims. We presented the district attorney's office, and the case right now is ongoing. The second one, October of 2021, an underage female survivor reported to the SFPD that she was kidnapped from her home country in earlier of that year. The trafficker threatened to kill her grandmother if she did not comply, so she agreed. So she moved across countries, sold to a coyote, who then smuggled her into the United States, brought her to California, where she was reunited with her trafficker. The suspect and the girlfriend sexually assaulted this survivor at their home while the victim kept in the shed in the backyard. The suspect then moved the victim to San Francisco and made her perform sex work. After we initially got the case by the SFPD Human Trafficking Unit, the suspect and his girlfriend were arrested and now held at a California jail. SFPD search warrants were obtained to remove the victim or the survivor from another possible trafficker. The case is ongoing. Having shared these two horrific incidents, the community can help us in a way, like we always said, you see something, say something, the model. Many of our cases come from the community tip line and referrals. It is very important to report any suspicious human trafficking activity, since many of these labor trafficking victims are often hidden from the public and the authorities. It is incredibly important that we educate the public in how to recognize these signs of trafficking in various forms, such as a street, maybe residential, a storefront, or labor. Indicators of the trafficking include someone who's being controlled, does not engage in normal client relationships. You see them working from morning to noon, then again at night on a continuous basis. In order for us, the SFPD, to be successful in our investigating human trafficking case, we have been and we always will be collaborate with other agencies. We actually work closely on human trafficking, labor, and commercial sex investigation with different agencies such as DHS, FBI, the California Massage Therapy Council, Department of Public Health, the Office of the City Attorney. Innocence Loss Working Group, we, every other month, members from different federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies and task forces all over the Bay Area meet to discuss child prostitution, human trafficking cases in the Bay Area. Information, flyers of missing victims, suspects, and trends are exchanged with each other. Obviously, we work with NGOs and community-based organizations. To name a few, the Mayor Task Force of Anti-Human Trafficking, Child Sex Trafficking Subcommittee, the Polaris Project, South Bay Coalition, Survivor Restoration, Department of Status of Women. So we do work with these different groups, and our success is based on, the involvement of everyone to help eradicate this pandemic. The SFPD and the Special Victims Unit have been and always will commit to prevent human trafficking through training and education. Our human trafficking team is very experienced and is headed by Sergeant Tony Flores. I'm sure a lot of you know who he is. He's a very committed individual. We continuously train SFPD members, NGOs, and other law enforcement agencies that often interact with survivors of human trafficking. We've implemented certain topics, recognizing indicators of human trafficking involving adults and minors, teaching members about victimology, trauma effects, to be better understand, recognize, and respond of signs of stress and trauma, properly investigating, collecting evidence that's crucial for prosecution, and how to interview and how to interact with these survivors who might be engaging in illegal activity for the trafficker, such as sale of narcotics, shoplifting, and credit card fraud. One of the things that was been challenging is the COVID, right? So the COVID-19 pandemic has significantly affected the prevalence of human trafficking. According to Polaris, human trafficking cases increased by more than 40% over a one-year period. Unemployment, closure of non-essential businesses led to spike in sex and labor trafficking. Many street sex workers had turned to other venues such as residential massage parlor, posting ads on the internet and social media platforms. So it has been a coordination effort among law enforcement agencies and social services made us more difficult to investigate these specific incidents. But overall, at the PD and the Special Victims Unit, we always are committed working with other agencies to hopefully curtail this pandemic. And thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to work with different individuals or different agencies that have not worked before. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Captain Chin. And I must tell you that SFCAHT has enormous respect for Sergeant Flores. We think he needs a raise. And now for the moment, really, all of you have been waiting for. It's the time for the Modern Day Abolitionist Awards. And, you know, as we start the presentation, I know there's a lot of past award recipients, including Sergeant Flores and Patty Lee from the Public Defender's Office, Anne Marie Conroy, I saw, Betty Ann, Brian Wells. If all the prior recipients could just raise their hand, oh, Benita Hopkins, of course, was a prior recipient, my illustrious co-chair. And I am going to ask the Deputy District Director and District Communications Director, Katrina Rill, from the Office of Congresswoman Jackie Spear, to just say a few words. You know, I am maybe one of Congresswoman Jackie Spear's biggest fans, and I know she's retiring, but I do believe that she will continue her support of the anti-human trafficking movement. And Katrina, I believe, has some certificates from Congresswoman Jackie Spear. So Katrina, are you there?
I am here, and
Oh,
it's
great.
my great pleasure to be here. And don't forget, she still has a year in office, and she's not going to just sit idly by.
Few.
She will stay
Great.
very, very active.
Great.
So on behalf of Congresswoman Spear, I'd like to congratulate the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking on its 12th birthday. You've done remarkable work to fight this horrific crime of modern-day slavery. I want to especially acknowledge the two co-chairs, Judge Brill and Benita Hopkins, and the Modern Day Abolitionist Award recipients. And Tatum King was in the office yesterday and picked them up, so you should be holding them in hand, Aaliyah, Jennifer, and Tatum. It takes a village as a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. Collaboration is key to ending human trafficking. It's such a complex problem that it requires resources from law enforcement, lawmakers, and service providers. Congresswoman Spear is so proud of all the work and collaboration of all the partners. As you may know, she convened a meeting with local and federal law enforcement after she first learned about human trafficking in 2010 from full-page newspaper advertisements that where human trafficking victims pled for help. And that really got her involved in the issue. She was especially appalled by the sale of children. While we haven't eliminated human trafficking, survivors in the Bay Area, because of your work, have so many more resources to give them a chance to reclaim their lives or to claim their lives for the first time. They are better venues for the protection of survivors and better venues for prosecution. We've made it very clear to traffickers, do not come to the Bay Area. Our work isn't done, but we'll keep fighting until we end this horrible scourge on humanity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know that there are certificates from Jackie Spear, and also I believe there are commendations from Mayor Breed as well. And Antonia is holding up the accommodations from Mayor Breed. They look very lovely, and everyone's going to get one of those who's an award recipient. So now turning to the actual recipients of this year's Modern Day Abolitionist Awards, I'm going to begin with Alia Whitney Johnson. And you know, if you go and visit the Hype Center, which is a multi-service drop-in service center for youth that Alia was instrumental in developing. And if you go and visit Alia in her office upstairs after your tour of the Hype Center, the way I did, you really never want to go home. Her knowledge about women and girls involved in CSEC issues, her energy, her creativity, her enthusiasm, her sharp intellectual abilities, and her ability to come up with innovative solutions to problems affecting underserved youth is awe-inspiring. She is the co-founder and executive director of Freedom Forward, a nonprofit in San Francisco working to prevent the commercial sexual exploitation of youth. And this organization works to transform the systems that so often unwittingly contribute to exploitation. Her work has often focused on bringing providers, youth, and government agencies together to reimagine systems in order to better serve youth throughout San Francisco. She was instrumental not only in developing the Hype Center, but FAM, which is a family-based foster care program for youth who have experienced or who are vulnerable to experiencing commercial sexual exploitation. She started the first youth advisory board. She founded and chairs Emerge, which is Emerge Lanka Foundation, which is a nonprofit that has equipped over 1,100 Sri Lankan girls who have survived sexual abuse and has equipped them with business acumen, life skills, and the financial resources they need to survive. You know, when I was done meeting with Alia on that sunny autumn day last fall, I thought to myself, I hope I know this amazing woman for the rest of my life. It is truly my great privilege to present our first modern day abolitionist award to Alia Whitney Johnson. Alia?
Thank you so much, Judge Briel. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. I am so deeply honored to accept this award for the work that Freedom Forward has been doing these past few years. But I have to say that none of our work would be possible without the wisdom and expertise of our many partners, some of whom are here today, and also without the honesty, the dreams, the ideas of survivors and youth across the Bay Area. So while I would never want to live in a world where our work is needed, I could not ask for a more dedicated and thoughtful community. The more that I have learned from young people, the more that I see that domestic sex trafficking is a result of racism, homophobia, misogyny, poverty, and much too often systemic failures that we are responsible for. A child who's been through too many foster homes and is just searching for love. A teen who cannot find the resources that they need despite our city's abundance. A young adult who's struggling to pay the bills or to find affordable housing. And again, these gaps create vulnerabilities that are ripe for exploiters to profit. We can and we must do better. Over the past few years, as many of you know, Freedom Forward has partnered with young people to reimagine how we connect youth to services, how we talk about trafficking, how we engage youth in multi-stakeholder forums, and how we support teens in foster care who've experienced exploitation. The key ingredient to this innovation is not brilliant new ideas, it's listening. Not only to those of you who've been on the front lines, but to youth who are most impacted. I believe that we can radically transform the level of trafficking that exists right here in San Francisco. But it's going to take all of us continuing to raise awareness amongst our own communities and continuing to coordinate our approach to working together in partnership with young people. We need to ensure that every single young person has easy access to youth trusted resources and services when they want them. Youth should not need to navigate their needs on their own. It's too easy for someone to take advantage. It's on us to consistently show up, to make spaces where youth are seen and heard, and to show youth that they are worthy of choice. And that's what we're creating at the Hype Center that Judge Briel just talked about, which co-locates phenomenal providers, many of whom are here today. As a community, I'm also proud to say that we have a rare and exciting opportunity to pilot a new approach to foster care for youth who are clear concern for commercial sexual exploitation in partnership with our city and our state. Let's prove that these young people can be wrapped with services right here in our community in family-based settings rather than in institutions. Through a new pilot called FAM, we are wrapping these families with extra training and support, including people who serve as grandmas or aunties like many of us had when we grew up outside of the system, a whole community of care. We cannot do this without all of you. If you are serving youth as a provider, please come join us at HYPE. If you're ready to open your door or know someone who would to build a loving home for youth in our community, we need you more than ever at FAM. Go to joinfam.org and sign up. We will wrap you with training, community, and support to ensure your success. And finally, I want to thank every single young person who has trusted, challenged, educated, inspired me on this journey. I wouldn't be here without you. And thank you to everyone here who's working to build a city that's safer and more responsive for our young people, an ecosystem that wraps them with care and love and support. It's going to take all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alia. And I know that Antonia has your actual plaque there and is going to make arrangements to get it to you. So next, I am really so excited to present our second Modern Day Abolitionist Award, although it's in no particular order, first, second, or third, but our next one is to Jennifer Daly. Jennifer Daly is both a senior attorney and the Dependency Project lead attorney at Legal Services for Children. And Legal Services for Children was the first nonprofit law firm for children and youth in the entire country. It is really fitting that Jen began her career as a court-appointed special advocate, or a CASA, in 1997, since her nomination for this Modern Day Abolitionist Award was made by SFCAHT program manager Sue Lockyer. Jen works with government agencies, CBOs, policy advocates, and others to elevate the voice of all youth who are system involved in order to ensure system accountability. She is a vital member of the San Francisco SFCAHT Steering Committee and Prevention Work Group. She provides training and technical assistance to many practicing in the field of dependency law. But what is not on Jen's resume is the fact that she has really been instrumental in helping so many of my colleagues understand harm reduction approaches to commercially and sexually exploited youth. And what is not on her resume, what it doesn't say, is the fact that she has helped me become a much better judge because of her thoughtful, quiet, and brilliant advocacy. There are city attorneys here today, CASA workers here today, and her own colleagues here today to support her as she receives this extremely well-deserved honor. Jen?
Thank you so much, Judge Briel. I'm extremely humbled to be in the company of the advocates and survivors who are leading this work and have been honored before me. They've inspired me and are my teachers. I believe I'm receiving this award today because in my role as a youth attorney, I have the privilege and freedom to speak out on behalf of foster youth in a way most can't because they're bound by their obligations of their agencies. So I can stand here today and say to you that the foster care system is creating an environment where human trafficking thrives. Many of my SFCAHT clients share with me that they'd rather live a life with an exploiter than face the trauma and loneliness they experienced in the foster care system. Let that settle in a minute. If you want to prevent human trafficking, we need to fix the foster care system. I have a 13-year-old client who spent this weekend in the hospital detoxing and recovering from head injuries inflicted by her exploiter. She had over 100 burns on her body. I've represented this young woman since she was 1 year old. So I've seen how the system has failed her at so many points in her short life. I work with another exploited youth who was in a medical hospital bed at SFGAHT for over 60 days because no placement in the entire state would admit her. Our systems are failing these youth, lawmakers are failing them, and our community is failing them. This theme of the SFCAHT conference this year resonated with me. It's everyone's business, prevention and protection of our youth. We need to take a good look at why the foster care system is failing and take collective responsibility for these youth. My fellow awardee and team from Freedom Forward can't do it alone. They can't run a specialized foster program without foster parents. Child Protective Services can't provide adequate care for these children if they don't have a place to send youth who need a home where they can heal from their trauma. And I can't advocate for what my clients and their families are telling me that they need unless people are willing to really listen and invest in their ideas. I've seen so much progress over the last 5 years in the services we provide to youth who are exploited. And I am so grateful to the partners at SF Soul for their amazing work. So I look forward now to collaborating with you all to address the issues of our foster care youth face before their first contact with their exploiter. The issues that they face that make them so vulnerable to exploitation. So thank you so much for this award today.
Thank you so much, Jen. And I'm very glad that your comments have been recorded so that we can listen to them and re-listen to them and learn from them. And as you said, and as Ollie has said, it's about listening and it's about understanding it's everyone's business and we can't do this, or you can't do this alone. So thank you. It is now my great honor to give our final award of this afternoon. Our award goes to Special Agent Tatum S. King. Special Agent Tatum King is the special agent currently in charge in San Francisco for Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI, the principal investigative component of the Department of Homeland Security. He has focused on anti-human trafficking work for a number of years. While assigned to Hong Kong, he worked closely with both the Hong Kong and the Taiwan authorities to provide training, education, and best shared practices on issues of labor and sex trafficking. He currently focuses his efforts on engagement and outreach to community-based organizations. And as Homeland Security Investigations liaison, he does outreach, collaboration, and training for SFCAHT. Anything SFCAHT asks of Tatum, his answer is always yes. If SFCAHT needs an expert on immigration, his answer is, I will find someone. If SFCAHT needs an expert on the internet or the dark web, Tatum's answer is, I will find you an expert. And if SFCAHT needs a contact for Congresswoman Jackie Spear, he provides the contact. If he needs a contact for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, he will provide that for SFCAHT. He is one of our most valued, dedicated members of the collaborative. He cares deeply about issues of human trafficking. And anyone, truly anyone, would be lucky to have him working on their team. It is my greatest privilege to present our next Modern Day Abolitionist Award, our final award, to Tatum S. King.
Thank you very, very much, Judge Briel, for your very generous remarks. I tell you, you're an inspiration. Co-Chair Benita Hopkins, Director Levine, you're all inspirations, as well as everyone else in the collaborative. But in particular, Judge Briel, Co-Chair Hopkins, and Director Levine are, they're true leaders and powerhouses that are doing this work 24/7 on behalf of SFCAHT to protect and support victims. and you know from the emails and the inquiries that they never stop, and they all have day jobs too. So it really says a lot that and their passion for this centuries old issue. Also, thank you to whoever nominated me. It's truly appreciated. I'm really not deserving, but I appreciate the nomination. Thank you to Congresswoman Spear and Ms. Katrina Rill. Their continued anti-human trafficking efforts are obviously, I think, an example for the rest of the world. They're really at the point of the spear for this longstanding shadow pandemic, as referenced earlier by Judge Briel. I really appreciate Mayor Breed for her recognition, and also in particular, congratulations to her, the Department of the Status of Women, Director Ellis, and Ms. Nazneen Wright and Foster, SFCAHT Director Levine, Judge Briel, Co-Chair Hopkins, Silverman, and the San Francisco chapter of the National Council of Jewish Women for their new pilot program in the County of San Francisco that was announced today. I mean, that's quite remarkable that resource is now being added to the community here. It's also great news on the extension at SF Seoul, as we know, another major player making sure that victims are getting the services they need and the support. You heard earlier from U.S. Attorney Hines, her leadership and her team's work on these priority prosecutions and the cases she mentioned today, that it cannot be done without her leadership, as well as the investigative partners in human trafficking and internet crimes against children task forces that consist with the HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, my agency, FBI, Secret Service, Department of State, San Francisco Police Department, as well as other federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies throughout the Northern California region. As you know, none of these cases are simple. We appreciate the CBOs and faith-based organizations that are out there, building those bridges with those victims, so they're aware of the resources that we provide. HSI is always standing ready to support victims, regardless of their immigration status. And we hope we'll get additional individuals that we can support as a result of the new hotline. As a reminder, our services include continued presence, employment authorization documents that are issued by our partners at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And we want to work with the CBOs to get those individuals that are trafficked, to get their support, and more importantly, to go after the violators and hold them accountable. We know this cycle continues and continues. It's as mentioned, a centuries old issue, but we want to make a difference. I also want to say, the awards to Miss Alia Whitney Johnson. I tell you, she's doing outstanding advocacy and service to youth, and as well as Miss Daly for her outstanding legal services to children. We know it takes really folks and trailblazers, and they are those trailblazers. Again, thank you to SFCAHT leadership, the CBOs, advocates, faith-based members, and government agencies. You are all an inspiration to myself and my HSI colleagues. And again, it's really my HSI colleagues that are the real heroes, as they'll respond regardless of time of day to support the victims, CBOs, and law enforcement agencies. Please also remember the DHS Blue campaign for any outreach materials that you'd like to obtain for distribution to the community. Thank you again. I value my time with SFCAHT, and I'll do all I can to support your efforts. And I wish you all continued success and innovation as you lead the Bay Area in anti-trafficking efforts. So again, thank you. I'm so humbled and appreciative of this recognition.
Thank you so much, Tatum. And as I said privately to Antonia, you are way too modest. And I think that there's a lot more in your resume you need to put in there. Thank you to everyone, and invite Bonita if you have any closing remarks. I just want to thank once again our modern day abolitionist award recipients. Bonita, any final remarks before we end?
I just echo both of you. Thank you everyone for being here today. And thank you to all the award recipients. So well deserved, each and every one of you. Thank you all for being here today. And we will see you at our Teen Summit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all our guests today, our partners, our friends.